I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.
Hello, my name is Brittany. This video is designed for my critical thinking about the history of computers class. Since I was born in the year 1993, I will tell you something that relates to computers, since that's the year that I was born. Well, have you ever wondered how the government has the ability to tap into phones as well as computers? This is called the Clipper chip. Well, the Clipper chip is a small chip that can fit into electronics such as telephones as well as computers. And the chip is very small and it's pretty inexpensive to make. The chip ranges anywhere from about $15 to $30 to manufacture, and once it's manufactured, the government has the ability to put them inside of phones as well as computers, and that's how they have the ability to bring up information as well as recorded phone calls or anything that relates to that. Well, on October 16, 1993, the White House Vice President Gore at the time announced that they would propose the ability to retrieve phone calls as well as bring up computers' data or information. And they would be able to do this by having the Clipper chip. And before retrieving information, the government as well as government officials like police officers will have to go through the court. And once you go through the court, basically you have to have permission and a court order to retrieve the information such as computer data, like codes or something that may be on a computer that's not legal, or previous recorded phone calls that have to do with situations. And basically once you have a court order, you can obtain this information. And the government proposed that the Clipper chip was there to ensure safety and the ability to spy on people, which would protect the country from anything, because back in the 80s they had things going on in the war such as codes or broken language, and once you have that, you really can't prove that it was there, but with the Clipper chip being invented and being there, they would be able to retrieve everything that was said or anything that was documented inside of a computer, which would be proof that there was broken codes or anything of that sort. Many opposed of the creation or being able to have your computer hacked into and you really don't know. People had protests, they even had public television appearances of people opposing, feeling it would be basically invasion of privacy because nothing's really private, and your telephone or even your computer could be tapped into at any time and basically you wouldn't even know. And people had public debates about whether the law should be passed. Some people thought it would be good because it would ensure safety, but others thought that it wasn't such a good idea because basically it meant no privacy and anything basically could happen, whether it was codes being broken, because in today's society people jailbreak, I hear, iPhones, iPods, things of that sort, which is against the law, and basically the Clipper chip would be able to retrieve it and where it came from. So basically the government knows what's going on and where things are coming from. 2 months later, on February 14th, 1994, the law passed that the Clipper chip would go into effect through the White House and the government. So now anything such as crimes or anything of that sort now, if anything happened, could be retrieved information, whether it was a terrorist attack or something. If there was information inside of a computer or phone calls that were reported, the government can now be able to retrieve them and use it for helpful information to help protect the country. So overall, I think the Clipper chip was a good invention because it ensures safety, just in case you never know what's going on. You're able to bring up information on computers as well as recorded phone calls as a source, and it's actually proof that something really happened, but you have your proof basically to back it up once it goes into effect. So now I think that the Clipper chip has basically helped our country out. I say that because even when we have things happening such as 9/11, there were phone calls that were retrieved, or even small things that go on in communities such as kidnapping or anything of that sort. they're able to actually, if a phone call comes in, they can track the phone call, see who it is, where it's coming from, the time, and even see if there's anything helpful in the background that's helping. So overall, I think that the Clipper chip is a good invention. And this is my YouTube video on the Clipper chip. Thank you.
Get to the roof.
The Clipper Chip. A Bad Idea, Poorly Executed by Patrick Medina. BIS 6113, Security Management. The power of most governments is not necessarily the power found in military arms or the sophistication of weapons. But in the power to keep secrets. The concept of aggressors hacking communications was commonplace even during the Civil War.
Captain, message coming through. Train is on its way.
Better get ready.
A good example of compromised communications is the Zimmerman Note that contributed to the Americans fighting against the Germans during World War I. Named after the German Foreign Office Secretary Arthur Zimmerman, who confirmed its authenticity, the Zimmerman telegram detailed how Germany would give Mexico, Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico in exchange for being Germany's ally during the war. Unfortunately for World War I era Germany, the note, which was meant to be kept secret, was intercepted by British intelligence and is an example of the CIA triad's value in government communications. In 1977, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST for short, adopted the Data Encryption Standard, DES, that was to be used as a standardized encryption for the U.S. government. While the DES certainly fulfilled the need in its time, technology was already pressing ahead with more advancements. By the 1990s, this encryption was becoming outdated. It was not outdated already. As further evidence that DES was outdated, a group of mathematicians and computer scientists networked about 600 computers from volunteers, and using their computer time, were able to solve a problem equal in complexity to breaking a 129-digit RSA key. While the RSA key was not a precise comparison to the DES key, the 129-digit RSA key was significantly more difficult to break as compared to the DES's 56-bit key. It was quite clear that a new encryption system was needed. To solve this issue, a new technology was adopted by the government, but while it did help with encryption, its primary purpose was controversial. In 1993, the National Security Agency developed the Escrow Encryption System, or EES, which also included the Clipper chip system. While this encryption system did provide a slightly better encryption to DES, it came with another feature. There are three keys used by the EES system: the session key, the chip key, and the family key, and the session key was split in half. The NIST would be responsible for one half of the key, and the Treasury Department's Automated Systems Division would be responsible for the other half. This leads to the controversial feature that doomed this encryption. If a government agency presented the appropriate authorization, that agency would be provided both halves of the session key and be able to access a backdoor to the EES system. The backdoor would allow that agency to intercept voice and data communications. It was the government's hope that the Clipper chip system would be widely accepted on a similar scale to modern-day smartphones, and thereby be able to intercept a wide range of communications. But by 1994, there was already a problem with the Clipper chip. Matt Blades of AT&T's Bell Laboratories was able to form a DOS attack that compromised the session key. The Clipper chip's backdoor access was granted by the Law Enforcement Access Field, or LEAF. Within about 42 minutes, Blades was able to replicate the LEAF, and while he could not eavesdrop along with the government, he could compromise the integrity of the session key via the invalid LEAF. Thereby, the agency listening into the communications would get nothing. One would think that such technology as the Clipper chip system would be highly controversial. And indeed, it was the target of a subculture of computer programmers who call themselves cyberpunks. These cyberpunks believe that cryptography is a liberating tool, and one of its most important uses is to protect communications from the government. Adhering to the subculture values, Philip R. Zimmerman created a cryptography program that would be able to protect computer data in electronic mail. This program, called BGP, or Pretty Good Privacy, was given away freely by Zimmerman, and is the same email security tool as found in the textbook on page 5. With the release of very strong and most importantly public encryption packages to include PGP, PGP phone, and Nautilus, the government was unable to stop the use of public encryption. With the advent of encryption systems that surpass level encryption found with ClipperChip, it would be unnecessary for a private company to adopt a ClipperChip while another encryption program was readily available, did not have to be paired with a similar device, and most importantly, free. The ClipperChip system was an attempt to increase encryption for the government, but its end result was being deployed as a means for the government to have the resources in place to intercept voice and data communications. While the ClipperChip was not intended to be employed in all telecommunications, the uproar over its introduction caused the development of rival encryption software that surpassed the ClipperChip's encryption and integrity. Consequently, within a few short years of its introduction, it became outdated. This particular attempt by the government to monitor communications via the ClipperChip commercially failed by 1996, when it was declared that the ClipperChip system would only be used for internal voice communications for the government.
Captain Luke Rover, I need air support right away. The suspect is headed to a rooftop on Nukuanu and Merchant Street.
Jen, lost him, he's headed west.
I got him.
I got him. Go!
I'm going around to cut him off.
Today, digital privacy is considered non-negotiable. Encryption technology is embedded into the apps we use and websites we visit, all thanks to open source cryptography. Once, however, it was considered a superpower that shouldn't be put into the hands of anyone. A similar sentiment you hear about artificial intelligence today.
How rude!
A digital invisibility cloak for cyberspace was a grave concern for law enforcement, who feared a brave new world of super fast and impossible to intercept criminal communications. Encryption was once classed as a munition and subject to export controls. Then as consumer demand grew thanks to the rise of personal computers, there were moves to outlaw its use altogether. In 1991, then-Senator Joe Biden tried to make encrypting messages illegal. And after his election, President Clinton made similar attempts. Rather than allowing encryption technology to proliferate, regulators doubled down. In 1991, Joe Biden introduced two bills containing anti-encryption language to prevent private emails, the Comprehensive Counterterrorism Act and the Violent Crime Control Act. This regulatory push galvanized technologists like Phil Zimmermann, who finished and released his open source encryption project, Pretty Good Privacy, or PGP, in response. PGP rapidly gained traction across the early internet, crossing international borders and making it increasingly challenging to regulate. Zimmermann became the target of a grand jury investigation due to his work. At the same time, the Clinton administration intensified efforts by advocating for the NSA's ClipperChip, a device intended to grant the government access to all encrypted communications. The ultimate aim of this project, led by Vice President Al Gore, was to mandate the use of this chip. After years of back and forth, the US government ultimately decided not to prosecute Zimmermann, and the ClipperChip project was officially abandoned. However, export restrictions on encryption continued to stifle the US software industry until they were eventually eased in 1999. Even though strong encryption is a key component of our everyday lives, from secure email and texting to online shopping and banking, this debate is far from settled. Even now, security concerns are frequently invoked to question encryption and new technologies like AI.
These algorithms, they are the
digital equivalent of AR-15s. I'm serious.
The hard-won lessons of the 1990s, when we came close to trading privacy and freedom for the promise of safety, appear to be forgotten in today's conversations about technology.
Everyone hold on a goddamn second.
Hey, any luck yet?
No.
Go, go, go. I got it. Let's
That was easy.
Man, glass tables are acting weird tonight.
Have you got the US Embassy? Well, please do that.
At the beginning of the film, you'll see there's this extraordinary phone call that Julian makes where he's calling, he's trying to reach Hillary Clinton to speak to the State Department and warn them that a password was being circulated and that files were circulating on the internet. And so you have this just sort of incredible behind the scenes encounter.
Are you recording?
Yeah. Oh, hello, can I please speak to Hillary Clinton? I'm calling from the office of Julian Assange. It's very important. Yep, so Julian Assange is the founder of WikiLeaks. Okay, and all of the US Department of State cables, we have intelligence that they are about to be put on the web, unredacted, not by us. And I would like to speak to her about this. Yes? You need to call me back. This is an emergency. You're the emergency line and it will take a while. Okay. Would you want to do that right now and I'll wait? He would like to speak to her about that, yes. Okay, well, let me start by giving you my phone number. 1 minute, please. More details other than the entire unredacted cable set is about to go on the internet. I mean, literally, it's about to happen. I don't understand why you're not seeing the urgency in this.
Just put him on. Who is he? Who is he?
Hello? G'day, Chad. This is Julian Assange. To try and make it clear, we don't have a problem, you have a problem. And we are trying to help you solve your problem because we are indirectly connected to your problem. I would like to speak to the most senior person available who can execute an action quickly to send someone to location here in Norfolk. Okay, thank you, bye-bye.
You need to cross the street on your left as soon as you can. Ethan, did you copy? Left, go left now.
I'm working on it.
Okay, now go across the street right in front of you. Ethan, he's getting away from you. You're gonna have to go faster. You're gaining on him. Go straight. Straight! Keep going straight! Go straight, go straight, straight, straight. Okay, now turn right. Right? Now? Yes, right.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm... Oh, it's left. Turn left. Sorry, I had the screen lock on. Thank you. What are you waiting for?
I'm jumping out a window!
What do you mean you're jumping out of a... Oh, sorry, I had it in 2D. Good luck. Turn left. You've almost got him. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, Ethan. Get him. You're right on top of him. That's it. He's right in front of you. Get him, get him, get him.
Yeah. 42 years after unbreakable encryption tools were first conceived that allowed individuals to communicate in private, they've finally gone fully mainstream.
WhatsApp has introduced a new level of encryption.
Amazon's Fire OS 5 will offer full disk encryption.
So encrypted, privacy protected, disappearing.
One milestone came in 2016 when the world's largest messaging service announced it would offer default end-to-end encryption on all communications.
WhatsApp messages can now only be read by their intended recipients and can't be accessed by anyone else, including governments or WhatsApp staff.
Law enforcement and intelligence agencies are still reckoning with this new reality. For decades, they demanded tech companies hand over private data on their users, sometimes without obtaining warrants. So companies like Apple have changed their policies, making it so individual users are the only ones with the keys to their own data.
Syed Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik opened fire.
Hours later, they were in turn killed by police.
This new era of consumer privacy led to a standoff in 2016, when the FBI demanded access to an encrypted iPhone belonging to a terrorist from San Bernardino, California. The FBI wanted Apple to write software that would weaken the iPhone's built-in security. Apple refused, telling authorities if the company were to create such flawed software that would work like a backdoor, it would create opportunities for hackers to steal private information.
What is at stake here is, can the government compel Apple to write software that we believe would make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world? It is, in our view, the software equivalent of cancer.
And yet there's plenty of consumer data that's unencrypted and accessible by large tech companies. From Facebook to Gmail, law enforcement can still get a warrant to get a hold of your data. But the growing use of end-to-end encryption by Apple in particular represents a drastic shift in power from government to individuals. But it's not as if unbreakable encryption popped up out of nowhere. It's the privacy community's answer to decades of government snooping. Year after year, technologists have battled the government in the so-called crypto wars, with the ultimate goal of giving individuals total control over their own privacy.
Chair recognizes the senator from Delaware.
In 1991, then-Senator Joe Biden introduced an anti-crime bill. It required that providers and manufacturers of electronic communications make it possible for the government to obtain contents of voice, data, and other communications when authorized by law.
The best weapon against terrorism is sound intelligence, knowing in advance what is likely to occur, having information.
Essentially requiring tech companies to provide backdoors for government snooping. Programmer Phil Zimmermann decided to build a tool that would thwart Biden's efforts. He wrote the first attempt at an encryption program for the everyday user called Pretty Good Privacy, or PGP. After it was published online, it spread everywhere.
Encryption is a way to scramble your communications.
Cooper Quinton is a security researcher and technologist at the Electronic Frontier Foundation.
If I send you a letter, anyone that sees the letter can read it and see what it says. But if I scramble it, if I replace each letter with a different letter, then nobody's going to be able to know just by reading it what I sent to you. Encryption is basically just that, but with a lot of fancy math that makes it very, very hard to unscramble. We need encryption because we need to be able to tell secrets.
Around the time Zimmerman was working on his encryption software, America was getting its first taste of the World Wide Web.
An online network called Internet.
Can you explain what Internet is?
Prodigy is the online service that connects your computer to news, shopping.
America Online, a new way to use your computer.
You start to see law enforcement getting nervous because they can see the writing on the wall.
That's Julian Sanchez. He's a writer and senior fellow at the Cato Institute and focuses on national security and surveillance.
They can see that effectively widespread use of this network is going to require widespread use of encryption. And so there were a couple methods the government used to try to limit the growing use of encryption. As cryptographic tools were being developed within the country, these were effectively, under the law, treated as munitions, as essentially weapons being exported. And so they were subject to limitations on the strength of the key.
The key is a string of numbers, letters, and characters that unlocks encrypted messages. And the longer it is, the more complicated the mathematical equation at its root, which makes it harder to break. In 1993, the Justice Department launched a criminal investigation of Zimmerman on the grounds that he violated the Arms Export Control Act. The idea was that by publishing a tool as powerful as PGP at protecting encryption, he was guilty of exporting munitions. To demonstrate that PGP was protected by the First Amendment, Zimmerman got MIT Press to print out its source code in a book and sell it abroad. Justice Department officials never indicted Zimmerman, and they began a long process of coming to grips with the legal and technical challenges of regulating software, so challenging that they went into the software business themselves.
And at the same time, there was an attempt to sort of preempt stronger domestic encryption technologies by offering their own alternative. And that's when the government developed a proposal that was known as the Clipper chip.
The Clipper chip was an encryption tool developed by the National Security Agency that had a built-in way for the government to gain access to the information. It was the first backdoor.
A backdoor is an intentional flaw in a security system that lets you and only you gain access to the system that you wouldn't otherwise have.
The idea was to make the Clipper chip an industry standard by taking advantage of the government's purchasing power, but privacy advocates fought back.
This was really the first crypto war, the fight between law enforcement and governments and a whole lot of computer scientists and privacy activists over whether the Clipper chip would become the standard for encrypted telephone communications.
The Clipper chip represents a new approach to encryption technology.
Well, I don't think that there's anything scary about the Clipper chip proposal.
Our society also expects to be safe from crime.
Why, in the name of Zeus, would anybody outside the United States buy one of these things if you've got that insidious little spy in it?
The fight, it looked like the government might win until a computer scientist named Matt Blaze discovered certain flaws in the Clipper algorithm, which everyone had been sort of assured was absolutely airtight, showing that, first, that it would actually not be that useful for the purpose law enforcement intended, but also that the government was perhaps not as good as evaluating whether encryption technologies worked as advertised.
Typically, when you try to invent your own cipher, you end up exposing your own information to somebody who's just a little bit smarter than you, or somebody who has the access to information that you just didn't happen to know.
An ever-present theme in the crypto wars is that the government is always a step behind the privacy community in developing encryption technologies. Just the fact that the FBI thought Apple had access to the data on the San Bernardino terrorist's iPhone is evidence of how out of touch the agency often is. After the Clipper chip episode, law enforcement agencies seemed resigned to the new era of encrypted telecommunications. There was even a compromise of sorts between telecommunications companies and law enforcement called the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act. Companies could still offer encryption, but they had to preserve the ability to wiretap.
They would be under no obligation to guarantee the ability to decrypt. That was sort of the trade-off. So on paper, it looked like the crypto nerds had won, but in secret, we now know that the intelligence agencies were not lying down and accepting defeat.
The NSA specifically targets the communications of everyone.
They're capturing the data as it moves across the net.
When you call grandma in Nebraska, the NSA knows.
The Snowden revelations revealed spying, but also how the NSA was surreptitiously targeting encryption. One of the ways was by corrupting a widely used software program called Dual EC with malicious code. The program was used by many big companies to generate the language that made up the key that was used to unlock encryption.
Not a pure backdoor, but they had what's called sort of a shortcut.
But using the shortcut didn't last long. Researchers who used Dual EC quickly figured out the algorithm was compromised. The NSA went back to the drawing board.
The problem for intelligence agencies is that encryption is math, and so you can pretty much be 100% confident that you know how secure something is. The math tells you this can't be broken, and being a big government with a lot of money to throw at it doesn't change the math. The answer, when you know you can't break the encryption, is break the endpoint.
The endpoint turned out to be the hardware people use to connect to the internet.
The NSA is planting backdoor spyware in American-made computer devices before they are shipped overseas.
The result of this was, unsurprisingly, a fair amount of anger from the companies that are responsible for making this stuff. The CEO of Cisco sent a pretty irate letter to President Obama saying, in effect, I can't do business dangerous under these conditions.
And the head of Cisco wasn't the only one. The growing outrage over NSA snooping began to grow in Silicon Valley after the Snowden leaks.
They didn't knock, they didn't call, they didn't send a letter.
If you don't comply, it's treason.
So frankly, I think that the government blew it.
Companies like Apple and Google reacted to the NSA's actions by announcing they would strengthen encryption in their products. As unbreakable encryption becomes more widespread, law enforcement still access it backdoors are a viable option.
The FBI supports information security. We support strong encryption. But information security programs need to be thoughtfully designed so they don't undermine the lawful tools that we need to keep this country safe.
It's sort of too late to rebottle the genie. What would make more sense is to accept that encryption is a good thing that makes us all more secure, and that building vulnerabilities into it is probably going to impose more security harms than benefits it's going to create for law enforcement.
What's worse is that the government may never realize how important secrets are to every single part of our lives.
Telling secrets is fundamental to modern society, it's fundamental to any sort of economy, and it's fundamental to democracy. I need to be able to tell you secrets. I need to be able to think secret thoughts, so that I can push the bounds of my society and challenge it.
The government is losing the latest battle in the crypto wars, but there are new tools on the horizon like quantum computing, which could break many standard encryption algorithms and shift power back into the hands of the state. But history shows that while the fight is never over, technologists have managed to remain one step ahead of the government, developing new tools and strategies that protect individual privacy from the overreaches of the surveillance state.
Half machine, half pussy.
Нифига себе! Лежите, вам нельзя вставать. Лежи, не вставай, лежи, не вставай. Мне скоро высохнет. Ты стоишь в моей.
Zelensky. Want that money, Zelensky? NATO says you're good for it. Where's the money, Zelensky? Where's the money, Zelensky? Where's the fucking money, shithead? Zelensky. Want that money, Zelensky? NATO says you're good for it. Where's the money, Zelensky? Where's the money, Zelensky? Where's the fucking money, shithead?
What's in the box? What's in the fucking box? I got you! No! You almost gave me a heart attack.
No! It was so hard not to laugh.
No! No!
A similar story happened to a young man in the
I am Mr. Obsidian. Prepare yourself for the Man of Black.